The sign was never wrong. They saw the sign. It wasn't hidden. It wasn't unclear. It didn't whisper. It warned. And yet people walked past it. Not once, not twice, but over and over again. Because signs don't force you to stop. They only give you a chance to listen. This isn't a story about confusion or bad timing. This is a story about a warning that stayed exactly where it was, while everyone else chose to move on.
An entire town stopped responding in a single night. No emergency calls, no evacuation orders, no signs of struggle. When authorities arrived, the power was still running. The machines were still operating. The roads were empty. At the center of the valley stood a warning carved into stone, one that had been studied, translated, approved, and officially declared harmless. Nothing went wrong by accident. Everything that failed worked exactly as designed. They say the loudest screams are the ones that never make a sound. Before anyone heard it, before any alarm registered, before any report was filed, there was already a warning pressed into stone, buried beneath frost, sealed under centuries of certainty. It didn't echo. It didn't demand attention. It waited. In a remote region of the Iron Mountains, far from cities, far from flight paths, there is a valley that does not appear on most maps. Not because it is secret, because it is inconvenient. The terrain is jagged, the soil is thin, the wind moves through it in a way that unsettles animals. For generations, nothing stayed. No farms, no roads, no stories with happy endings. At the center of this valley stands a marker, not a sign in the modern sense. No paint, no lights, no language meant to welcome. A slab of black basalt, taller than a man, scarred by time and weather, its surface carved so deeply that even erosion failed to erase it. Around it, the land rises unnaturally. Spikes of stone and concrete, angled like broken teeth, thrust upward as if the earth itself were recoiling from something below. This place was not built to be understood. It was built to be felt. The people who designed it never expected gratitude. They never expected remembrance. They expected distance, fear, abandonment. They were not trying to tell the future what was here. They were trying to make sure no one ever asked. Because this valley was not a monument, it was a wound. In the early 1990s, a classified project was completed beneath this site. Its purpose was simple to state and impossible to solve: contain something that would remain dangerous longer than any civilization, longer than any language, longer than memory itself. The architects knew fences would rust, databases would vanish, symbols would be reinterpreted. Even skulls, they argued, could one day mean reverence instead of death. So they abandoned symbols. They turned instead to instinct. Linguists, anthropologists, engineers, all focused on one question: how do you warn a human being who shares nothing with you? Not your words, not your myths, not your science. The answer they reached was unsettling. You don't explain. You repel. They called it nuclear semiotics. The valley was reshaped into something hostile to the soul. No symmetry, no beauty, no patterns that invited curiosity. The ground was designed to feel unstable, the structures angled to suggest threat, not order. Nothing here encouraged rest, reflection, or wonder. And at the center, buried beneath stone and frost, they placed a message, not written to persuade, written to endure. This place is a message and part of a system of messages. Pay it heed. The danger is in a particular location. It increases toward the center. The center of danger is here. This place is not a place of honor. No highly esteemed deed is commemorated here. Nothing valued is here. No promises, no explanations, only negation. The lead architect, Dr. Eris Thorne, wrote privately that the sign was not meant to stop the curious, it was meant to outlast them. He believed that even if language failed, even if meaning eroded, revulsion might still remain, that something deep in the human mind would still recognize the warning, not intellectually, physically. For a time, it worked. The site was sealed, classified, quietly forgotten. Committees dissolved, documents were archived, then migrated, then summarized, then reduced. The valley remained empty, not protected, ignored. Then, the world changed. A town formed at the edge of the mountains. Roads arrived. Infrastructure followed. The black spires became landmarks. Teenagers spray-painted them. Hikers photographed them. Local folklore turned the site into a curiosity, then into a joke. What was designed to repel became ambiguous, and ambiguity is an invitation. When a private energy corporation acquired the land in 2024, they did not see a warning system. They saw an anomaly, an unidentified subterranean structure interfering with surveys and projections, something undocumented, something inefficient. A cultural risk assessment was commissioned, then condensed. The carvings were translated, cross-referenced, and summarized in a single internal line. Symbolic deterrent structure, no actionable hazard language. The words were not disputed, they were reclassified. Internal reports noted irregular geometry beneath the valley floor, materials inconsistent with known geology, a structure too deliberate to be natural, too degraded to be modern. Risk assessments were conducted, reviews requested. No active hazard detected within acceptable thresholds. The conclusion was not malice, it was optimization. The site was cleared for exploratory drilling. Locals objected, quietly. They spoke of sickness in the stone, of animals avoiding the valley, of a pillar that darkened when it rained, as if the mountain were bleeding. These concerns were documented, categorized, dismissed, not out of cruelty, because they could not be quantified. On a Tuesday morning, under a low, colorless sky, the drill began to turn. At first, nothing happened. Soil, rock, normal resistance, normal temperature, normal air composition. Everything behaved as it should. Until it didn't. At a depth below the frost line, the drill struck something that was neither stone nor metal. Resistance dropped, temperature fell, a pressure differential formed where none should exist. Then the sensors began to scream, not in panic, in precision. Radiation levels spiked in patterns that defied calibration. Gas readings returned compounds that did not degrade as they should. The air carried a smell described later as synthetic, old without decay, sterile without safety. When the drill head was withdrawn, it came back coated in a black residue. It did not evaporate, did not freeze, did not behave like anything on record. They had breached a seal. Deep underground, fractured by force it was never meant to endure, the basalt message cracked open, split through words that had waited patiently for centuries. For the first time, the system of messages was no longer whole. That night, the town went silent. Not dark, silent. No alerts were sent, no calls logged. Power stations ran, screens stayed on, but nothing responded. When first responders arrived the next morning, the gates were open. The drills were still turning. Monitors displayed live data, red zones expanding outward from the valley's center. There were no people, no bodies, no struggle, only absence. At the base of the black marker, a fissure had formed. From it seeped a dark, viscous substance, not liquid, not solid. It traced the grooves of the ancient text, filling the carved letters one by one. The message was still there, but incomplete. The architects believed fear would endure longer than language, that instinct would succeed where symbols failed. What they did not account for was this: humans do not break seals because they disbelieve warnings. They break them because the systems they build reward progress over pause, data over dread, and solutions over restraint. The sign was never wrong. It was read, translated, filed. What failed was everything that came after. Somewhere beneath the Iron Mountains, something that was never meant to be understood is no longer sealed. It is no longer waiting. It is responding. And if you were there right now, would you even recognize it? Or would you walk past thinking it was nothing at all? And what would you do if it turned its attention to you?
The sign never changed. It didn't fail. It didn't lie. It waited. And long after the moment passed, it was still there, saying the same thing it always had. If this story stayed with you, like the video, subscribe, share it with someone, and comment your thoughts below.